Welcome to the KayaCast, the podcast for cannabis businesses looking to launch, grow, and scale their operations.
So I know that you're a serial entrepreneur, particularly in the event space. You also co-founded Blunt and Brunch, right? Blunt Brunch.
Blunt Brunch. Yeah. That evolved actually a few years ago when I moved. I'm from California. When I moved from California to Arizona, being in the cannabis industry, California is a huge market, so you tend to get in a bubble. You're focused. So I knew going to a whole nother state, it was going to be all new, and so I reached out to my friend, who's my business partner now, Parisa Rad, and we both were chatting, and we're like, let's do a brunch together. Not thinking anything about a business, just like you bring some friends, I'll bring some friends, and we all chat. It was coming out of COVID, so we all wanted that connection. And we left and we're like, we need to do this again. And we started doing it again and again. And then people were like, well, you're putting the time and effort, give yourself value too. So then it started to become an actual business. And now this too, like EventHi, is also nationwide.
Wow. So what has that evolved to? Do you guys create your own events, or are you creating events for other people?
So it's a little bit of both now. Just to be clear, because I know sometimes people get confused. So EventHi is on the software ticketing side. EventHi doesn't produce events. We work with event organizers. With Blunt Brunch, we produce events. So we produce our own events, and that's what it started off in the beginning. It was, intimate events, 30 to 40 women. We'd either go to brunch or we'd go do an activity and have blunt conversations. Then we have a big national event during MJ BizCon week where we bring 350 or more industry professionals. It's definitely geared more towards women, but our allies are welcome to come. And we kick off MJ BizCon week. And then we started collaborating with conferences to have like women's lounges or meetups, again, to providing a space for women. And there's kind of a mix. We do quite a few events within the Blunt Brunch name. We know how important it is to have our allies in the room. So then we started doing co-ed socials as well. But as you curate all these different experiences, we started getting asked by brands that had product launches or were doing company parties for their employees, if we could produce events for them. So that also became a new service that came out of nowhere. Again, with Blunt Brunch, every day I look back and I'm amazed that this was not supposed to be a business, and every day it becomes more and more a business. So now we also produce events for those that are needing help with event production and planning.
Wow. I love hearing that. I love hearing the spontaneity of how businesses start. So now with Blunt Brunch, do you start, or do you help women-owned businesses, or is that a mission still in working with companies that are women-driven and creating events for them, or just broad events that are in the industry?
When it's our own events, it's definitely geared more towards women. The goal is, again, to have a space for women to come together and be a part of these blunt conversations, listen to them, see how we can make sure that women are still a part of the conversation, having a seat at the table, and getting access to management positions and above. When it comes to producing events for clients, it's anything, if Christmas party, holiday party, a product launch party, a big award, whatever it might be, we were open to doing it as long as it still doesn't impact the mission of Blunt Brunch. We still got to keep our own mission alive, and we don't want to get too distracted by producing all these other events that are not part of our brand.
Events, I've seen events. We do a lot of events internally, and I'm just thinking through about a successful event that we've launched versus events that are not so successful. And it's such a neat tool to build a community, but also build your brand. I'm sure that you get this. I mean, you're knees deep in it. It takes a lot of work. So if I were a brand in this industry, or even a dispensary in this industry, and I'm planning on leveraging events as a vehicle for me to build a community where I am, where do I start? What makes a successful event?
Yeah, I mean, there's different things, when it comes to looking at events. It's definitely what is your goal with it, and before even that, I wanted to state something that I think a lot of people kind of get nervous about or they lose interest. They'll go through all this work and host an event, and your first event may only have 10 people. It may only have 25 people. Again, Blunt Brunch started with 10 women around a table. Like, the size of your event does not like lessen the value of the community you're building. The community will grow, the people will come. You just have to start from somewhere. But with that, again, like
I
what
love
it's
that you say that because it's
it's
so
true
true.
though.
And just like
Yeah.
any business, it's a 20-mile march.
Yeah. Yeah, for reals. And I see a lot of, from EventHi side, I do see a lot of event organizers who can kind of get, not lose interest, but like just get they're not encouraged because their first event, they expected so much of a bigger audience. And again, we'll go into some of the tips that I'm going to share. But it really goes back to everybody being a part of the event and making it a success. So I'll save that tip for a minute. But again, start with clear goals. Let's say going back to the dispensary, like they are wanting to reach maybe an older demographic. So they're going to start doing like educational workshops, bringing in a nurse to start talking about utilizing medicinal cannabis as you get older or whatever that might look like. That's definitely an educational event. Um, you know, what does that look like? How many people can you fit in this venue or at your dispensary? What local, I don't know the proper word of it right now, not retirement homes, but in a way, what kind of, what are those local locations look like where they hang out, and go partner with them. State, we're going to bring a shuttle bus, pick them up, bring them to the dispensary. Because a lot of them may not be able to drive right now, or, it might be a little bit harder. They might take public transportation. So there's just little things that you want to make it so convenient for your audience to come to that event. So
Oh, I
again,
love
for
that.
them, yeah, it's a little bit extra. You're gonna have to pay
But
for these.
you're finding it in my mind, like you're finding a distribution channel really for your
Yeah,
event.
yeah, exactly. You want them to come, you got to bring them to you sometimes. But that's where they are too. Yes, you can promote it, but I could be like, oh yes, my mom is a perfect candidate, but then you're waiting for me as somebody else that goes to your dispensary to maybe send it to my mom, or maybe bring it to my mom. So yeah, you want to go where they are. So, again, start with clear goals, know your audience, build a strong production plan. Timelines are everything, but also timelines have to be flexible. There's so many events, and I'm very type A, where I'm like, timelines have to kind of be like this. But as soon as the event happens, things always change. And half the time when something goes wrong, nobody else knows it but you. So you're stressing, thinking everybody knows all the issues, but nobody sees it half the time. Uh, and, there's plenty more, but the only one other thing I wanted to tap into is, again, when I was saying, you're going to have a lot of different parties helping this event. You might have sponsors. You're going to have your event. You as the event host, you'll have sponsors, you'll have partners, maybe media partners, creating custom marketing assets for them, creating copy, making it so easy. All they have to do is download copy, put on their social media, put on their newsletter, making it so easy that they don't even have to think to get the word out. Because again, it's power in numbers. They have an audience that you don't. You have an audience that they don't. And the more audiences you can get in front of, the more ticket sales you're going to sell.
I want to dive into that just a little bit because I find that the first problem that people need to solve is getting, I mean, not 100 people, but even 10 people to their event. Or, we're starting an event. What does success look like? And so what are some of the strategies that and you've alluded to that, go where the people are. That's one. Have partners, make sure that you get in front of the audience. If I was planning an event, say for 20 people to come, is there a ratio of signups that I should have, a goal, say maybe 60 people sign up and 20 people come? Do you guys
Yeah,
have a ratio that you guys go by?
definitely. Especially if it's a free event. When it's a free event, and I hate to say it, but it's so true because I see it happen all the time. When you have a free event, people will go in and they'll just automatically click the most amount, or they think they're going to bring a +1, or so they'll maybe get 5 tickets, and in reality, it might just be one of them, or in reality, they don't have like any. It's kind of like skin in the game. They didn't pay for a ticket, so the
Yeah.
chance of them going, if something else comes up, or I'm getting called into a work late, like I'm like, I might have to miss that event. You don't necessarily. There's nothing to get in return. So again, like definitely count for more, get more tickets out there. If it's a paid event, you'll obviously know how many ticket sales that you have. And I think when it comes to especially the first couple events, even now, Blunt Brunch has been doing this for 4 years, and we still will work with collab partners, influencers, VIPs, where we will gift tickets because we want a certain, we want some, let's say dispensary owners in the room so that we can make sure we're connecting them to our brands that are in the room. So sometimes you are going to have to budget in, which can be a loss of costs, but you make it up in other ways. So again, count on giving some stuff for free, sometimes even vendor space. It's again, to make especially the first event a success, you want the works. You want people to be wowed so they'll come back to your next one. And by then, maybe the second, third, or fourth is when you can start to finally break even. It's, I by talking to a lot of event organizers and from experience, you don't necessarily break even on the first couple events. You can get close, if you're very lucky and you maybe got a free venue, there could be ways, but it's very hard. So you just have to kind of budget that in and realize it's okay that you were a little negative, and how do you next time get out and make sure you get closer to not negative and start making an income.
So that's you've alluded to setting a goal, and oftentimes it's a really hard thing to set as a dispensary owner because you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to create an event, I'm going to create a community, I'm going to give some free stuff away. Some of these individuals may be customers in the future, some may not. What should be the thought process of that 20-mile march where maybe what you've alluded to, your first event is going to be small and you need multiple events to build a community. So when I'm thinking about a goal, am I thinking about, hey, what is my goal for 20 events, for example? What is my long-term goal, and to work backwards for that event? And if it's not a monetary goal, what are some examples of goals that are really good leading indicators that I'm marching towards the right direction?
Yeah. So again, I think there's again, depends on who the event organizer is. Let's say, I see a lot more brands hosting events. And these are not, large scale events. They are intimate. A lot of them are invite only. And it's because they want to get in front of the consumer to see how they use their product, to get them to give real feedback, to provide an experience where said potential customer down the road, can really understand how their product should be used, all the things about it. It's just building that like one-on-one connection. Brands will still go to conferences because they do see the value in those, but I have started to see them also create more smaller, intimate events. And again, for them, that goal is because they're trying to build relationships with a customer down the road who's going to go and buy their product, find out where they are, or recommend their product to their own dispensary that they go shop at. So that's more specific for that kind of approach. Let's say when it comes to more of a like service provider, or I've seen even consultants, they have started off hosting events, and at the end of the day, one of the biggest goals for them is, by bringing people together, they saw a need, for let's bring B2B entrepreneurs together in a room, and it helps the industry. But I can also be their point of contact. They're going to hire me for consulting. I'll generate my own leads by hosting these events in person. They're coming to me. I've seen some events like that. For Blunt Branch now, again, this came out of ours was more of a need where we felt we needed a space to feel heard personally. Like this was really, Parisa and I both felt like we just needed a space where we could have blunt, again, I'll go into it, blunt conversations. We talk about imposter syndrome. We talk about things that, we experience as women that we might not be able to share in front of like our male counterparts, or let's say hardships are happening with our company that we may not be able to share with our team. There's certain things as a founder that you may not always be able to share with them because, for whatever reason. So again, for us, it was more providing a space that we knew we needed and we knew other women were going to. So it wasn't necessarily like monetary. Obviously, now that we've built it, we've realized there's overhead costs. This does take a lot of time. We have to now pay for our time to produce these things. But like I said in the beginning, that specifically was more for finding a space that we knew we needed.
That's so amazing. You guys started a mastermind group and you grew it to nationwide.
Yeah. All over Brunch.
I gotta tell my business partner, she's a woman, and
Yes.
yeah, definitely. I know that a lot of people really, when they think about an event, they think about this grandiose big thing like you alluded to. I'm gonna create this thing that's huge, and although that's a really great goal, the focus really is on that day,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot of work, not a lot of thought on what happens post-event, because post-event is oftentimes the work after an event is what makes the event successful. What are
So
some strategies or what are some things that people should think about, maybe pre-event to make the event successful and post-event to make the event successful?
So a couple things, it is going to definitely be in the communication. One tip or one strategy that we've used at Blunt Brunch, and this is for pre-promotion. As we did our first national event, so this was new. We were going to Vegas. We were like, we got to make sure that everybody knows about it. And I had this idea where, we make graphics for every sponsor. Now, what if we made a graphic with every guest, making them feel honored, that we want to highlight them as a guest. They are going to be in the room. That's something that we shared, but it makes them feel valuable and it makes them share it. So now you have not only your sponsors, not only your partners, but the guests that are going to be in that room sharing something that you've built. And that honestly was such a great mark to start with 4 years ago at our national event. It's now something that all the ladies look forward to. They're like, I can't wait to get my photo, my custom graphic. And, yes, it was a marketing thing, but it was also, again, going back to, I would feel so special because you usually just see the speakers or the sponsors, which are valuable, to highlighted. But now I'm being featured and I'm just attending the event. Like, how cool is that? So that was one thing. It's like coming up with unique ways that you can have your guests also involved. Maybe it's not an image. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's like can't think of the word, but like a scavenger hunt, like finding unique ways to get them excited about going to your event. Now, after the event, I agree 100% with you. The post communication is, I think it needs work for a lot of event organizers. And I get it. After an event, I'm exhausted. I can understand if they're doing a huge festival or anything, but it is so important to have some sort of strategy. And there's a couple things, you definitely want to do a post-marketing campaign, again, highlighting all the sponsors, highlighting, what happened, so people can, I don't want to say have FOMO, but in a sense, like, oh, you didn't make it, look at all these things that happened. And if you are doing more of a quarterly or monthly event, have that next date already in that first email marketing campaign where you are like, thank you. This was such a great event. Huge shout out to our sponsors. Here are some photos and here's the next date for our venue or our event, The other thing that's important is send a survey. Send a survey, 2 different ones, one to your sponsors and one to your guests. Feedback is great. We all can learn from it. And sometimes you might get like, might be sensitive. You might be like, oh, dang, they didn't like that. But like, again, you don't necessarily have to change something because one person said it. But if you are getting a consensus where they were like, that was not good, or this needs to be changed, or there was too much, there was too many speakers talking to us and not enough networking. I would have loved more networking to be able to meet people in the room. Like, you look at that advice and you kind of tweak your timeline, tweak your schedule around, maybe don't have as many speakers next time. But those surveys are so valuable. And it is hard to get people to do surveys. So again, have a little incentive. Maybe be like, you complete your survey, you're going to get a 15% off promo code to our next event. something tangible that they can utilize that, might incentivize them to complete that survey and provide you with more information.
I love that because we talk about all the time on understanding your customer. And if you don't understand your customer, you don't understand your business.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the best way to understand your business is talk to your customers and get some feedback. And this,
Yeah.
I never really thought of all that from on the event side. That's true. People that come to the event are your customers.
Exactly. Yeah. And next time they might bring a friend. The first time they might have just been them. So if they even feel like, oh wow, I felt heard. I feel like they at least listened to me. Again, you don't have to change it because one person said it, but again, just acknowledging. Like I feel like a lot of people in this day and age, no matter what, in business and in not, we want to feel heard. Like you don't have to change everything, but again, it's just okay. At least they listen, and maybe they're going to work on it or. The same thing with EventHi. We produce all of our technology, and so we have like an open door policy with all of our event organizers. If you don't like something, let us know. Like we have a communication board online of every feature or issue that somebody has shared with us, and we tally it. We see how many have complained about this feature because we don't know. We only know what we know, and we don't know how you're going to use our technology. And, so having all this information and seeing, oh, wow, that has a lot of feedback. Okay, next software launch, like we need to fix that,
I was going to say that there's nothing worse when you're setting up an event and you're investing all this attention and money into the event and your platform then kicks you off their platform that you're using.
Yeah.
And now you have to go offline. So tell me a little bit about that problem that that was the seed that started EventHi.
Yeah, that was the exact seed. We had a digital media company, I guess, called Direct Cannabis Network. It was a online media platform that was focused around cannabis tech, entrepreneurships, and startup. I love TechCrunch. I came from the consumer electronic industry, so I was like, oh, I could be like the TechCrunch of cannabis. Like that was my goal. So we started hosting B2B events, no consumption. It was just, we're in San Diego and we were using a mainstream ticketing platform and they shut us down. They shut us down, even though there was no consumption, no sales. It was that we were in cannabis and ticket sales were coming from people in cannabis or sponsors were paying in it just tied back to everything cannabis. They froze our funds. So we produced that event. We basically were in the negative after that event because they held our money for months. But it was that moment of if we're going through this, somebody else has to. And so we started reaching out, just putting it out there. Hey, you're an event organizer. Have this ever happened? Have this ever happened? Or warning event organizers. This happened to us, so be prepared. Like it could happen to you. Because for some people, that kind of hit will take them out. They take some time for them to recover for that. So, again, after we found a consensus that yes, this was a problem. And for those that may not know why it's a problem is they consider it a prohibited merchant, a prohibited transaction, and a prohibited event because again, it's coming from cannabis industry, essentially. So we started looking at that and then we were like, okay, well, how do we even fix that problem? And it goes to the banking. It goes straight to credit card processing and banking. And we wanted to make sure that we were as transparent and compliant as can be. So it took time, but we found a bank, a marijuana-related business bank that would work with us and a credit card company that would work with us. We basically had to speak to both CEOs, pitch them, convince them to work with us. And then we had to convince them to work with each other because they both weren't, technically working with any cannabis tech companies before. And so that was then, we became their guinea pig, essentially. The cannabis bank that we worked with only worked with dispensaries, only worked with cash-focused businesses. Again, they weren't working online with credit card processing. So that took a while to evolve. And then we built our technology from the ground up. And again, ever since then, we own 100% of our code and we've been building it since. And now we're in 47 states.
Wow, when did you guys launch?
So we came out with our private beta in 2017. We were working on EventHi behind the scenes, 2016, 2015. But we had a private beta with people that we knew. There's still people that we look back and we're like, oh, they're number 2 in EventHi, or they're number 10. They're organizers that like wanted to be, again, guinea pigs, wanted to work with us, tell us what was broken or what they needed fixed or what didn't make sense to them. And then about, I would say 2 years after that is when we went public beta and really opened the doors to people publishing the events themselves on EventHi. And then it went from there. We obviously got hit during COVID and we pivoted for a little bit, but we made it out alive.
That is I think that's the story of every entrepreneur,
Yeah,
right?
for reals.
There's so many bumps along the way.
Yeah.
And you have to maneuver. What is in your opinion, the most successful event that you hosted on EventHi?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And success looks so different in a couple different ways. So I'll give you like a small one, and then I'll give you a big one. There was an event producer. She doesn't produce events anymore, but she would produce the most unique experiences ever. And I remember this one to this day, and I always talk about it. It was called Sushi and Doobie. And so this event series, you would go and you would learn how to roll a sushi roll, and you would learn how to roll a joint. And you would obviously consume the joint and enjoy the sushi roll. And then they would end it with like CBD infused ice cream. And it was just an experience that everybody, all your senses were kind of being touched. You learned about the plant. You learned how to roll it. You also partaked in creating your own sushi roll, and then you enjoyed it, so it was everything that she created. It was really, again, an experience. It touched all senses. You learned about a product. So but those were small. Those were intimate events that she would do. And then, there's a couple large scale festivals that we have worked with. One it's free. It's a free event. And before regulation, before California went recreational, not regulation, went recreational, it was a massive festival. It was huge. It was about, they were reaching over 50,000, 65,000 event goers. And it was packed. And it was so much fun. It was free. So it was accessible to everyone. And then the sponsors and the vendors got so much value because so many people were attending. They still do this event. And they're regrowing it. It definitely changed once things in recreational went, turned, because we also lost a lot of brands when recreational. So many companies closed or couldn't get a license and all these things. So it definitely affected the event sector because, it was a lot harder to find brands that understood the value of marketing or that, had the budget. But I'm sorry, going back to his event though, he had music, he had vendors, it was consumption friendly, he had food vendors. Every vendor was doing something very unique. And it was cool. It was a really awesome event that we were able to work with and grow with.
Wow, that's a pretty big operation.
It was. And,
how
and
did
we
he
were still in
leverage?
our infancy. So I'm like, they
Yeah.
trusted us at the time.
How did he leverage EventHi? What were some of the things on EventHi that he leveraged to either get or make that event successful?
Yeah. So for us, if I recall correctly, because this was in the very beginning when we first launched, he actually did get shut down on, I think, Eventbrite it was. And so he heard from us. He heard about us, and he reached out to my business partner, and we onboarded him. And basically, how he used EventHi was he put up his event page. He built out his event page. Again, this was a free event. We didn't have our sponsorship feature yet, so we weren't helping with anything with sponsors at the time. It was just him utilizing our ticketing software for people to register. And at the time, we would help, and we still do this. We still market events to our community. Granted, back then, again, we were in our infancy, so we helped, but it wasn't as much as now we are able to help event creators that are putting their events on EventHi. Because now we have a larger audience. We are at 175 100,000 registered event goers that are looking for events throughout the US.
Wow. What has changed on EventHi since then? And you mentioned you guys have a sponsored feature. So as an event organizer now, I can have sponsors organize on my page and transact.
So not they can't organize, but basically how that works is it kind of goes back to the payment processing. Because the second thing we started hearing from event organizers is, great, my ticket problem is solved. I know I'm not going to get shut down. I can sell tickets easily on EventHi. But now here I'm trying to close a sponsor and I can't collect their money. I got shut down on XYZ, Stripe, whatever, WePay, whatever payment processor that they were using. And so again, we had to connect with our bank and payment processor to see like how we could get this approved, how it would be compliant. And so again, on our end, we just have some protocols. We just have to make sure we're reviewing all the events, making sure that somebody's not saying it's an event and quote, it's like really selling weed on our platform. So that was things that we had to do. But anyways, I digress. So then we built out the sponsorship feature. And so now you create your event page and then you'll create your sponsorship page. And now you'll have two different links. You can send this link out to any brand. They can look at your deck in there and then literally buy without any other, steps. They can just buy right there. You'll get an email. You contact them. Hey, see that you purchased your sponsorship. Now here's XYZ information. We also promote that to brands. So with EventHi, we have a weekly newsletter. We promote on all of our social media platforms about events that are happening. Then we have a newsletter that goes specifically to brands that have expressed interest to learn or who have purchased sponsorships from us from EventHi in the past, and they get to learn about these other sponsorship opportunities. So again, it's become its own marketplace in a way. It's still in development. It's in its phase 1. We are going to make it more. We're going to have it be more front facing eventually, but right now it's just more connected to the event organizers ticket page, so you see it all together.
Delia, what other features have you come up with or you're coming out with that are tackling the unique problems of setting up an event, a general event or an event in our industry?
Yeah. So, we've listened to what our community needs, and so we're going to be adding a lot more data and analytics. Right now, it's very general. So that was one thing that we've realized. We also realized that event hosts would like to have more access when it comes to advertising. So right now we do have advertising packages, but what I'm talking about is more on the actual platform where they could go in and be like, you know what, this week I want extra exposure. And so for them to be able to just go to the website, go to their event page, and then say, push my event for this many days, and it'll move them to the homepage. So that'll, so now it's just, there's no back and forth between me and them.
Yeah.
They can just go do it for that week, for those 2 days, really whatever their budget can do. That's something that will come out in the future, but we've heard that and we know how valuable that is. Because again, you might be doing really well on ticket sales, but that last week it slowed down. So you want to gain some more traction. There's also some things that we don't necessarily have yet that we're developing that, again, mainstream, bigger companies that have been around for a lot longer than us have already built. We're going to be looking at building more of a emailing system directly from our platform. We don't necessarily have that yet, but we have everything that they definitely need. They have discount codes that they can use and give people discounts. Again, the sponsorship feature, they get access to our general marketing. And so again, these are just the unique things that we've kind of continue to add on to our platform to better it and enhance it as we go.
That's awesome. And guys, if you're listening, it's very difficult to build in our industry because when you're talking about even say texting, well, Twilio's not in the industry, so you have to find a vendor that is in the industry to leverage. So it's a little bit more tricky.
Yeah. It's not as easy as if we were all just doing a business outside. We'd have access to not getting shut down on Instagram or Facebook or even
So if somebody wanted to reach out to you and not only use the platform, but also use your help on creating an event? That would be possible, given that you're in both industries.
Fine. Yeah. And two, I just love masterminding. So, I'm always down to mastermind on an event. I'm happy to share some of the things we've seen that, were mistakes or wins. But yeah, from EventHi side, we can help with the ticketing, and from Blunt Brunch's side with event production. So it's really a one-stop shop with two different businesses.
Are you guys active in the emerging states today?
We with EventHi or Blunt Brunch?
EventHi.
Okay. EventHi, yes and no. So, when we say we're in 47 states, the ones that are not that don't have anything yet for cannabis per se, those markets are really just educational events that we're seeing. So, or a lot of like how to get in the business, like a lot of workshops. Obviously they don't have like consumption yet and things like that. But, that's how we're getting into the market there, is all through education and workshops. That's our beginning foot into a lot of these states that we're not in, or that just launched into medical or recreational or what.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Would you have ever thought that you would be in this space? I mean, it kind of just fell on your lap-ish, right?
It did. And the thing is with that, like it really did, because my dad is a retired sheriff. My mom used to work for the district attorney investigators. She was a specialist. So that was obviously a big no-no, and being Latina, that's another big no-no. So yeah, there's no way. I had a corporate job, I did not think I would be here at all, building any business in this industry. But like you said, you find your way. I found my way. I was a patient. I had some health issues, and it brought me to cannabis. And that's when I was like, I want to do something for this industry. And here we are almost 12 years later, and I'm still here. I think I'm crazy sometimes, but I'm still here.
What's the next event that you guys are hosting for Blunt Brunch?
I'm going to mention two because they're two different ones. So Halloween is coming up. We're having our Halloween co-ed social. So it's a big, we don't normally necessarily have consumption events, or mostly like B2B at restaurants, things like that. So we have a couple throughout the year, which are more fun, consumption friendly. This is one of them. And that one is going to be in Phoenix, Arizona on October 15th. But the big one that's coming up is December 2nd in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's Blunt Brunch Nationals, Pearled Up and Powerful, empowered by MJ BizCon. And this is going to be a night to kick off MJ BizCon. It's our formal event. Men and women dress up, they play on theme, and they get to network. We have vendor activations, light appetizers, a DJ. It's just a night to really, kind of set the mood for I'm in Vegas now without it being too late. We know the next day's the conference. So we like to get the networking in, have everybody feel beautiful for a minute, and then they go to their hotel. And the next day we see them at the show floor.
So you probably started planning for the MJ National show probably like a month after the last one, right?
Yeah,
It sounds
literally.
like it's pretty massive.
And now it's here. I was just telling my business partner, I'm like, it doesn't feel like, it's coming. I'm like, it feels like we just started it. And I know it's been months. That, it was literally January. Our last event was December. We started January.
So when you're planning, and this is how many years have you been doing this?
So, events, actually, it was like a little mom and pop business I launched when I was in the consumer electronic industry. I ended up launching a company called Lily and Rose. It was a side passion. It was like my real step into entrepreneurship. And I was doing event planning and floral design. So I would produce events for weddings, for the casinos, like things like that. I would do more like kind of corporate events and again, weddings and things. But again, like it was just for fun. It was, the corporate world, it was just very stressful, and I wanted something for myself, but I wasn't fully ready to become an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
So that was like my step into event planning. But now it's like kind of full circle to now have these two companies that are fully about events and, and planning, because we talk with a lot of event organizers who are using EventHi that are planning their events, and then I'm producing events. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
So MJ BizCon, what? I just can't imagine the work that's involved in this, the time. What is when you're planning and you're thinking about, okay, this will be a successful event if this happens, what is that ROI that you guys are measuring?
Yeah. So this is our 4th year hosting it. And each year it's really the takeaways that we learn. So, you know, the beginning of Blunt Brunch National, it was a sit down. We would have like brunch or like lunch together, and we would have everybody talk to the ladies. We learned after the second that, it was hard to wrangle the women because they were out in the hallway talking, and they're like, they're being so loud, we can't hear the speakers. The following year, we're nixing it. They don't want to listen. They want to network with each other. So we stopped, we removed the brunch, we moved it to night, and we said, okay, this is going to be a night out for you all to network and have fun. And so again, it's just learning each time, like, what do they want? And so that's really what has been the success so far. I mean, obviously attendance wise is a goal. We started with 50 women. The year after was 250 and 350, 300, and then 350. And this year we want to reach about 350 to 400 because it's still, that's kind of our sweet spot. We don't want to get any bigger because it's too much. And we could always go lesser so it's more intimate, but we feel like this still allows for a lot of people to have a lot of fun. We've used the same venue for the past 3 years. So that's the other thing. We don't have to learn something new. It's like stamp and repeat, but we just make it better. We enhance the stamp, basically.
I was going to ask you that. Hosting a Christmas party, a company Christmas party, can be a nightmare, right? Because how many people are going, how big's the venue, all of these things. And I was going to ask you that. How do you select the venue and anticipate the people coming to it? Because you have to pick the venue so far in advance. And what does that math look like?
Honestly, this one we jumped because this venue that we pick is large. It's very big. But we can move people from space to space. So for us, what we've learned about, and that's why we still stay with the same venue. We know how they work. We know the venue space, but we can, I hate the word corral, but we can move the audience where we want them to in the venue. And I think that's important. You don't need to have it fully open the whole time. You can have spaces, like, again, guide them into the experience. And that helps, especially if it is a large venue. Once we found this venue, we're like, no, we're settling. We're going to stay within this attendance size, and we know how they work. We know our budget for food each year. It just becomes a little bit easier. And like I said, now we just work on the enhancing of the event. Like, what can we do to change it up?
So you've gotten to a point where, are you turning away people that want to go because you've gotten so successful and you're capping the number every year?
Mm-hmm. I would say the first 2 years when we weren't too sure. Now there's wiggle room in those numbers, so we don't necessarily turn anybody away. But the first year, we had to launch 2 other events because we sold out that 50-seated brunch for women within like a couple hours. So then we ended up impromptu producing a bowling event where we sold more tickets and people could join us to go bowling. And then we did a meet and greet at the conference. So it was all about pivoting because we did hear, women felt that they didn't get the opportunity because we sold out so quick. So
And these are all entrepreneurs.
Yeah, they're all entrepreneurs. They're all in some sort of capacity, either a business owner for a small business they're growing, or an executive to a big MSO. They're all ranging, or they're an employee, they work for someone, or they're a consultant. So it ranges. And again, Vegas brings so many people from all over the world, really. Our farthest guest, she came from, I don't know which city, but she's from China. And she found our event online, I think on LinkedIn, and she contacted us and was like, I want to go. I'm going to MJ BizCon. And she was our farthest guest that we've ever had in our second event. And she still comes every year, so now we're kind of like, who traveled here and how far did you travel, so we can get a consensus of where they're coming from. Because now it's just not in the local cities or markets. It's from everywhere.
Wow, that's so amazing. So as an entrepreneur, how does it feel to have built such a strong community? Because that's every entrepreneur's dream.
It's really cool. On both sides, from Blunt Bridge's side, we now have a virtual community where we bring the women together when we're not in person. So that change has brought the community together even more. We have virtual events. We have a B2B directory. We're still trying to find ways to connect because, again, producing events are hard and you can only produce so many events a year. And, when the industry is getting bootstrapped, it's harder to raise money for sponsorship. So we had to kind of change things up as the industry was going through its ups and downs. So that has been amazing to see it grow and flourish. And then from a EventHi standpoint, it's just really cool to just see like the different experiences that we know are bringing other people together. It's not just the event organizer that we're excited to have part of the community. It's now somebody found, again, maybe Sushi and Doobie, and they're like, wow, I found my tribe. Or, another one was a jazz and rolling event. So like not like rolling cigars, rolling blunts, rolling things like that. But it was with jazz music. And I look at that and I'm like, whoever likes jazz just found their tribe, and who also loves to consume, like best of both worlds for that person. So it's just cool to see both of these businesses be bigger than us in reality, be bigger than me, and do something to bring people together.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I can talk about this all day, and I know that you have to run. Before I let you go, how can our listeners find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it's Adelia Fakhri. And so is that. It's also Adelia_Fakhri_ on Instagram. If you want to learn more about EventHi, you can go to www.eventhi.io, and it's like HI high. And then Blunt Brunch is bluntbrunch.com.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the KayaCast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.